For 5 centuries before the end of the Second World War, the West had been expanding. Its missionaries, its pilgrims, its soldiers, its explorers pouring out from its shores to cross oceans, settle new continents, build vast empires extending out across the globe. But in 1945, for the first time since the age of Columbus, it was contracting. Europe was in ruins. Half of it lived behind an iron curtain, and the rest looked like it would soon follow. The great Western empires had entered into terminal decline, accelerated by godless communist revolutions and by anti-colonial uprisings that would transform the world and drape the red hammer and sickle across vast swaths of the map in the years to come. Against that backdrop, then as now, many came to believe that the West's age of dominance had come to an end, and that our future was destined to be a faint and feeble echo of our past. But together, our predecessors recognized that decline was a choice, and it was a choice they refused to make. This is what we did together once before, and this is what President Trump and the United States want to do again now, together with you.
It is genuinely unbelievable to hear these words coming from the American Secretary of State, even considering then to that audience on the world stage. I mean, it is unbelievable to see the American Secretary of State, the global hegemon, get up there and tell an audience of European elites, tell the world, not just that we're not going to apologize for being American. He is making specific mention of the efforts to decolonize, to deliberately lower European American influence throughout the world, to exert influence only as anti-influence, to use our power only to diminish our power, to pursue these goals of multipolarity, which is just communism with extra steps, right? To treat all civilizations, insofar as we're calling them civilizations, to treat all countries, all nation states, as though they should be equal participants in the state of the world, the state of global affairs, as though they should have equal power and say to Europe, to the United States. That was, as some have said, and I agree with this, the most significant effect of the 20th century, the most significant happening of the 20th century, the effort to decolonize, the effort to diminish that Western society is in fact supreme, which apparently everybody still agrees with today, because they are literally risking their lives to get into Western countries, be those America, Europe, where have you, Australia, even every Western country, and even Western aligned countries like maybe, and I may get in trouble for this, but Japan even is dealing with a similar kind of issue with immigration, mass migration, things like that, though of course they're handling it a little bit better than we are. So it is to say that we are having to understand that multipolarity, properly understood, is literally just like global communism. I mean, we understand that maybe the EU and NATO are these like globalist forces, but it's not even that they're globalists in the sense that they want to control the whole world. They want to permit and to aid the ascent of the third world and to only use their power to keep at bay authentically nationalist Western parties, again, be those in America or in Europe. So that's why typically at these events, even from American presidents, American heads of state, secretaries of state, you would hear this language even from Republicans about rights and equality and dignity. That is all language of surrender. That is all that means. Insofar as we are supporting the rights of people who are not in our country, that means giving them free stuff from American families and allowing them to come in and move in for free next to American families. Equality, same thing. Not equality under the law, equality insofar as we are literally making equal a standard of living. We are making equal the opportunity for them to come in and be American, just as people who have had ancestors here for hundreds of years are American. That is all language of surrender. This is the complete opposite to that. It is completely antithetical to everything that has been professed by the American ruling class since the end of the Second World War. And you do kind of have to understand the trauma that was more or less experienced by the West at large following the Second World War. We have no concept of this. You know, I don't even know if people in my generation can really experience trauma. I mean, they'll say that COVID was traumatic because they didn't have a proper high school graduation. And I don't mean to make light of that. I know it's a meme, but they say that all the time. 9/11 was certainly a traumatic event. Millennials will have a good memory of that. But in terms of seeing like a mass war where you have lots and lots of neighbors, people you knew personally, go die, talking about 400,000 people dead, Europe, of course, completely devastated. Russia, of course, completely devastated. That did have an effect on the sort of consciousness of humanity, on Western society, that enabled these kinds of actors, these nefarious communist actors, to come in and say, look, we have a solution. What if nobody actually cared about anything ever again? What if we simply selected against the authoritarian personality? If we did that, well, then we could avoid world war. We would never have another land war again, never have a ground war again. There would be no invasions. Of course, this was disproven. This sort of end of history cycle was disproven in 2022 upon the Russian invasion of Ukraine. But it is to say, this has done nothing but diminish Western influence, American influence, European influence throughout the world as a stated goal of this policy. Again, not because European influence, American influence is itself bad, but simply because it is so good and produces something so exceptional that by its existence, it is offensive to those who cannot reach the second floor, much less the Sistine Chapel or the moon, right? So that is all this is. And for an American Secretary of State to get out in front of these people and say, hey, not only are we supporting this, it's not just that we're Americans. You know, this was obviously a running joke in the 2000s that America created a lot of maybe harmful stereotypes with some of our allies in Europe. Americans want to get out here and beat our chests and talk about big guns and big trucks. And we're America. We're extending the olive branch. We're saying we want America to succeed, but we also want you, Europe, to succeed. You're our allies. We want you to do well. Why would we say that in this context? Why does that make sense if Big Mark is getting out there and he's saying, obviously, we think that American society is itself exceptional, it's worth preserving, our history, our heritage is worth preserving. We view ourselves to be the stewards of this torch. We should continue to carry it despite the interruption that we've had since the aftermath of the Second World War. Why would he say that in a way that includes Europe? Obviously, we know the state of Europe politically. We can tell that these people did not exactly love that speech from Big Mark, which perhaps is why he delivered it. He says that because it does call back to that history that we do share. You know, America is very unique culturally. We do have a certain spirit about ourselves, a certain frontier spirit, a certain crassness, but also determination. And it is a very unique character. There is a very real American spirit, and some have tried to define this more successfully than others. We do draw from many different sources, of course, you know, Greek thought, English constitutionalism, maybe our very own American love of liberty, Germanic chivalry. We are an outgrowth of 1,000 years of Anglo-Saxon civilization. We share a lot of attitudes with people over in Europe. It goes deeper than history, right? Even if now, politically speaking, a lot of people in Europe are opposed to sort of the way that they view America. I don't think we necessarily need to put tension on those relationships by continuing with this very brash sort of, we're America, we're number one. Like, I think that it is okay for us to acknowledge that our way of life, our civilization, our history, these things are superior, and Europe is a big part of that. We want to extend the olive branch. We want to be allies. That's perfectly fine. You know, we don't want the brother wars to continue unnecessarily, because it is true that whether you are in America or you are in France or England or Japan or Australia, it doesn't matter where you are. The threats that you are facing civilizationally, I mean, we all have crime and poverty and, you know, your typical stuff. In terms of like scaled threats to literally your civilization, your way of life, your future, the ability of you to be confident in a desire to settle down, have a family, plant roots, nurture those roots, that is being threatened by right now by the ascent of the third world, which is being directly enabled by the incumbent sort of Western political class, albeit in less secure nature as the years continue. So I support Big Mark doing this. I like Big Mark doing this. It's a good sign that he is doing this. It's a good sign that you have people in the administration writing speeches like this. It's a good sign that you have a Secretary of State who is, without hesitation, delivering speeches like this to that audience on that stage. This is very promising for patriots. This is the new normal. These kinds of conferences, while not maybe, you know, not exactly the operating room, right? In terms of things actually happening, things being productive, things getting done. They do exist, however, as this kind of grounding, this sort of center for how things are going to be. What is the agenda? What are we doing? What are we trying to do? So when we're up there announcing this to be the case, that, yeah, actually, sorry about the last 60 years or so, we're kind of going to like move away from that. And hey, you want to ride sidecar? Please, by all means, we want to be friends, Europe. We love you. You're like our dad. You're like our grandpa. We have no natural incompatibility. And that has only become more obvious as we begin to see what true incompatibility culturally looks like. That has caused Americans to suffer. It's caused Europeans to suffer. And we can have simply no more of that. And thankfully, under the leadership of President Trump, it seems that we actually have a real shot at righting that ship.